And right now we're in the Hollywood Hills.
Yes, we just drove down Hollywood Boulevard and we saw like the Walk of Fame and it was so cool. Finally the same height as you. Yay!
It only takes a rail and a balcony. That's all it takes. A rail and a balcony. In a hotel in LA. In the middle of nowhere somewhere. Arizona, Utah, I don't know. But we're in the middle of some canyon. There's a river down. What's wrong with you?
There's something on my foot.
Something's biting Brittany's foot. She didn't bring any shoes, folks. She brought sandals to come to the We're in the Rockies. Rocky Mountains.
I didn't think about needing closed-toed shoes, okay? It is July.
We're grizzly bears.
People wear flip-flops in July.
Alright, so we are currently, right now, driving on Route 66.
Historic Route 66.
Historic Route 66.
On this edition of On the Map, we go back in time for a history lesson. Then we refresh our cause for liberty at the Capitol. And finally, we reflect on our time in Richmond at the Lewis Ginter Botanical Gardens.
I came here as a tourist, visiting the city more than 30 years ago, and I forgot to leave. So I am now a full-time resident of Virginia. I live just outside Richmond, commute to work. I like the fact that Richmond is big enough to have the amenities of a major city, but it's small enough to feel like you're living in a smaller town with a lot of social connections. People know people. There's a high level of friendliness. The cost of living is very comfortable. A surprising number of museums, historic sites, and restaurants and family-friendly places to go. It's a vibrant community.
Richmond is a fantastic city when it comes to the atmosphere and vibe of downtown. But not far from downtown is the James River, and you can find fun and excitement on the banks of the river any time of year. If you're not a fan of fun on the water, however, or taking a Segway tour of the city, then perhaps a look inside the historic landmark here in Richmond will pique your interest.
We're at the historic Tredegar Iron Works, which began in 1837 when a man named Francis Dean and his partner Rhys Davis decided to build an ironworks here on the banks of the James River. Rhys Davis was from Wales in a town called Tredegar, and it was basically in his honor that this site was called Tredegar Iron Works. Rhys Davis only worked here a few years though before being killed in a duel with another workman. But the name that he inspired lives on to this day. We still refer to the whole site as Historic Tredegar.
A quick tour through Tredegar or the American Civil War Museum will take you back in time and shed light on many intriguing stories of Richmond's grand past.
Tredegar Iron Works began in 1837, but it's most known for its service during the American Civil War. And at that time, you'd have to imagine this whole site covered in about 25 buildings. Would have been hot, noisy, active forges going. We only have a few historic structures still standing. Before the Confederates left town, before the Union Army came in, they were given orders to burn cotton and tobacco, things they thought the Union Army could use. With the shift of the wind, that fire got out of control. Started burning building after building in downtown Richmond. That fire got as far north as Capitol Square and as far west as this very building, which is the building we're about to go into, the gun foundry made to cast cannon for the Confederate Army. The fire got right up to Tredegar, but either through the actions of their workers or just through luck, the fire did not reach Tredegar Iron Works. Tredegar would survive that evacuation fire, though a lot of buildings in downtown Richmond weren't so lucky. About 1,000 buildings were destroyed in that fire. That fire burnt all night. It was still burning the next morning when the Union Army entered the city. The Union Army actually helped put out that fire, This building, as I mentioned, is the building that today houses our exhibit in the cause of liberty. Our museum is different from many Civil War sites in that we don't focus just on the 4 years of battle. We start with the causes of the war in colonial times when the seeds of disunion were planted. And we go all the way through the war into Reconstruction and also focus on how the Civil War still affects us today. Some of the artifacts presently on exhibit include this piece of body armor behind me, kind of like a Civil War Iron Man, though it just covered the chest. These bulletproof vests never really became popular. They were heavy, they weighed about 10 pounds, they were hot to march in the hot summer of the South, and if you used one, the other soldiers thought you were a coward. So even though they were widely marketed at the beginning of the war, they never really caught on.
Exhibits at the Civil War Museum include one-of-a-kind artifacts such as pieces off the first hot air balloon used during wartime, as well as clothes from Jefferson Davis and his family. But most intriguing of them all has to be the stories behind some of the mysteries surrounding Tredegar Iron Works and its purpose during the Civil War.
We have evidence of submarines being made here at Tredegar from Alan Pinkerton. Alan Pinkerton was in charge of the Union Intelligence Service. You may be familiar with the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which gets mentioned in Westerns from time to time. But during the war, Alan Pinkerton is in charge of the Union Intelligence Service. And in his memoirs, he writes about sending a secret agent to Richmond by the name of Elizabeth Baker, who used her feminine wiles to make friends with a Confederate officer who gallantly offered to take her on a tour of Tredegar Iron Works. And during that tour, she said she saw a demonstration of a submarine. She said she came back the next day for another tour and saw an even larger submarine being built. Then about a month and a half later, a Harper's Weekly article came out about a Confederate infernal machine trying to sink ships in the Hampton Roads area. And while we don't know for sure, I think it very likely that that infernal machine was one of the submarines built here at Tredegar Iron Works. During the Civil War, the bullets were called mini balls, named after a Frenchman named Minier, but Americans it's called the mini balls. And they were made from soft lead. When they hit the body, they would not go out the other side, but bounce around inside the body, causing more and more damage. The doctors at the time found the best way to help them was just go ahead and amputate the wounded area. It's estimated about 60,000 amputations were performed during the Civil War. A good surgeon could amputate an arm or a leg in 5 minutes. Many people think that they didn't use anesthesia during the Civil War, but they did. You may have heard of biting on a bullet. While this may have happened a few times, less than 5% of surgeries would have been performed without anesthesia in the North or the South. They would not be fully unconscious, but they would inhale fumes that would make them loopy. We have stories of Civil War soldiers singing songs while they're having limbs cut off. They're singing the Bonnie Blue Flag. So behind me is an example of a surgeon's kit, and that large saw at the top is the capital bone saw that they would actually use to cut through the bone that they wished to remove. Our mission is to tell multiple stories of the Civil War from multiple perspectives. We don't just focus on the generals, but the civilians on the home front, as well as the privates on the battlefield, all the Americans who made sacrifices and made choices that brought us to where we are as a country today.
Leaving the museum with your history lesson in tow, make sure to take a brisk, relaxing walk down the sidewalk next to the banks of the James River, because you never know what sort of community activity you may encounter, such as having a yoga lesson on the lawn.
From Civil War and national progress to the steps and inner walls of one of the oldest and well-preserved state capitol buildings in America, you can experience all avenues of history here in Richmond and do it with a great tour guide.
We are glad to welcome over 114,000 visitors a year to the Virginia State Capitol building. It is still a working state capitol for the legislature. It opened in 1788 and it's still going strong today. And we are also a fine arts museum and a civics classroom, occasionally a filming set, and a pretty interesting historical attraction. For more than 200 years, Richmond has been the seat of power, and the Capitol building has been growing over time to meet the changing needs of Virginia. We began with a monumental Roman temple-style Capitol building, the first classical temple-style government building anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And that building had legislative, executive, and judicial departments all together under one roof. But after more than 100 years of use, from 1788 until the dawn of the 20th century, we found the building had finally gotten too small. So, between 1904 and 1906, we added 2 wings, one wing on the east for the House, the other wing on the west for the Senate, and we resumed operations in the building. At the beginning of this century, we found we had to expand the building again. So between 2004 and 2007, the Capitol underwent an extreme makeover with renovation and restoration, and we built a new addition underground in front of the building, connecting to it with visitor center amenities, including a gift shop and an exhibit space where we're standing now, and public meeting rooms, a cafe, and other amenities to support state employees and visitors.
The Virginia State Capitol is home to some truly magnificent sculptures and pieces of art. If you loved the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, just wait until you see some of the sculptures inside the Capitol.
When we pass through this door, we leave 2007 behind and come into the ground floor of Virginia History and Politics, a building of 1788. We're now standing in the rotunda, which is the heart and soul of the original 1788 building. Pride of place, center stage, goes to George Washington. And we have on display the best statue of Washington ever made, because Washington himself, when he was 53 years old, posed in person for this marble masterpiece. It is life-size, and it shows the father of our country right after the American Revolution at the height of his fame and glory. It also shows a man who was willing to leave behind his military service to return to private life as a farmer and a citizen. His sword is unbuckled and put off to the side. He stands in front of a farmer's plow, from war to peace. And finally, towards the end of his life, he's called back to public service to be the father of our country, our first president. And to symbolize that service as a statesman, he stands next to a tall bundle of rods, a very Roman symbol of authority. Except this bundle of rods has 13 individual rods which have been bound together united. United we stand, divided we fall. Or when you look on our circulating money, it says E pluribus unum. That translates, we are one out of many. Thanks to General Washington, soldier, citizen, statesman. We are now on the floor of the Senate of Virginia. This chamber opened in 1906 and is still in use today. Interesting to reflect the symbolism of the entire building. This is an original antique desk from 1906. This is an original Senate chair from 2007. And so you have a chair and desk touching each other. They're 101 years separated by time, but they're working together where the past and present connect. The people in this room are thinking about the future of Virginia. A landmark of architecture inspired by that visionary Virginian Thomas Jefferson, who wished to create for us a timeless, classic public building for American principles. Come and find it for yourself. Bring your cameras, bring your curiosity, and take a free tour.
Touring and taking in all the stunning architecture can take a lot out of you, which is why we recommend a stop to regroup, drink, and taste some great cuisine at the Quirk Hotel's Maple and Pine restaurant.
A casual but yet upscale dining experience. think, you know, as far as service goes in Richmond, I think we're at the top of the service scale, which, you know, plays a huge part in a dining experience as far as enjoyability.
A fine example of dining indeed, the Quirk knows about great quality service because it is a modern hotel built in an antique space.
Built in 1916 as the J.B. Mosby dry goods store. It was a high-end department store and was this grand department store in downtown Richmond. And today it is a 74-room luxury boutique hotel with a signature restaurant in the lobby. We took some efforts to make sure that we retained a lot of the original beautiful bones of the building, like the original cathedral groin ceilings, the original hardwood floors on the sleeping room floors, the original windows which offer a lot of amazing natural light into the common areas. When we were coming up with what our concept was for the hotel and the concept for our branding, we wanted you to feel special when you were in the space, and we wanted the space and the experience to be an enriching experience for you. So when you are here, depending on what you consider an enriching experience, we kind of are able to touch on all those areas. For instance, if architecture is what you find enriching, we certainly have plenty of interesting architecture throughout the building for you to enjoy. If art is what you find enriching, we have original artwork from regional and local artists featured throughout the entire hotel. If food is what you find enriching, we have an amazing chef who has come up with a beautiful new American menu for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In fact, he also created a lot of the pottery that the food is served on with a local pottery company. So if pottery is what you find enriching, you'll find that in the pottery. And then finally, if just having the experience and the interaction with true, authentic people and have an authentic experience in the destination is what you find enriching, you also get that at Quirk Hotel, because we hire people that are the experts in the town, who are from the town, who are born and raised in Richmond, and can tell you the secret place to go take a great run, or who can tell you the best place to go get a good margarita. That has been our focus, to make sure that this experience when you come into the hotel is enriching at every point.
Try to serve a new American cuisine, utilizing what's in season and the best of what's in season. Go locally whenever possible and whenever it's the best.
Maple and Pine's menu mixes some favorite foods that many people are used to with a savory new flavor sprinkled into the mix. This creates what Chef Dave Dunlap refers to as New American cuisine.
America is a melting pot for all different cultures, so we're pretty lucky as Americans to be inundated with all those different cultures and flavors. So I try to take flavors from different cultures and intertwine them in my dishes.
From a classy hotel and restaurant to the Gilded Age of class, we step back in time to a different America here at Maymont Mansion.
Welcome to Maymont Mansion, home of James and Sally Mae Dooley. The house was built in 1893 and was their home until 1925. At that time it became part of the city of Richmond, and we've been open to the public starting in 2016 for 90 years.
Maymont is a 100-acre estate. It was built by James and Sally Dooley, a millionaire couple who lived here from 1893 to 1925. And when Mrs. Dooley passed away in 1925, they gave the property to the city of Richmond to be used as a museum and park. And it has been open now for 90 years to the public. And over the years, many other things have been added. We now have a nature and visitor center, we have a children's farm, we have wildlife exhibits, so lots of animals. And we also have historic gardens that were part of the original Dooley estate, and that's where we are right now in the Italian garden.
The acreage here at Maymont is blanketed with colorful gardens and rolling hills. On a beautiful day here at Maymont, you can get a sense of how it would have felt to spend an afternoon in the Dooley's company. how did this place come about being called Maymont?
That's a good question. Mrs. Dooley's maiden name was May. She was Sally May, and Mont is French for hill, and the mansion is at the top of a hill, so we have Maymont.
All right, Major Dooley made his money investing in the railroads throughout the South after the Civil War. And the Dooleys were very wealthy for a couple in Richmond and had not one but two drawing rooms. This drawing room referred to as the blue drawing room, as it's covered in blue silk damask. It's also, if you notice, all of the beading in this room, all the silver beads are covered in aluminum leaf. And aluminum was worth more than gold at this time, and so was another way for the Dooleys to show off their wealth, as they did with the gold in the pink drawing room. They also were into new technologies that were being developed at the time. They had electricity in the house in 1893, which was fairly new, and they put lights in the corners of this room to show off their new electricity to their guests.
In addition to the amazing mansion that the Dooleys built and the gardens, like the Italian garden that we're in now and the Japanese garden, we also have a children's farm. We have wildlife exhibits with black bears, a bobcat, bison, and we have a nature center with fish and turtles and some really cute river otters.
The wildlife that is cared for on the property creates an environment for all of the family to find something of interest.
We're going up to the second floor living hall of the Dooleys, and the second floor was a more informal space of the Dooleys, somewhere where Mrs. Dooley would have done maybe planning, as you see here, for her gardens, which are quite extensive on the estate. But it is the only floor in the house where we can see all three sections of the Dooleys' beautiful Tiffany stained glass window. This window was so special that it actually was in the newspaper twice in 1892 as it was being delivered to the Dooleys' residence as it was being built. So all of Richmond was excited to see this new window going in at the Dooleys' residence. All right, we're gonna head on into Mrs. Dooley's bedroom, which is really one of the last showpieces of the house. Mrs. Dooley's swan furniture is quite the climax at the end of this house. She has a swan bed, swan rocking chair, swan desk, and swan dresser. This set of furniture was actually originally at the Dooley summer home, Swananoa. It's on Afton Mountain near Waynesboro, Virginia, and it's about twice the size of this home. But the Dooleys knew they wanted to leave this home to be a museum and park for the public, so they asked for some furnishings to be brought to this home when they passed away to be put on display. This is one of the sets since Mrs. Dooley had this made for her by a company in New York. The other amazing piece in this room is the Tiffany & Company dressing table and chair. This is a one-of-a-kind set made by Tiffany & Company. It's all sterling silver and narwhal whale tusk. So all of the ivory that you see on the chair and the dressing table is all from narwhal whales, which are Arctic whales.
Well, Maymont is really a place for everybody. We do not have an admission fee, and there is something for everyone to do. We have a children's farm with goats that the kids love to feed. College kids and teens love to come here and hang out on the lawn. Families enjoy picnics and walking the grounds. You know, it's a great place to get exercise. There's 100 acres. We have weddings in this amazing garden here. So at every age and every interest, there's really something to do at Maymont.
The whole point of a vacation is to relax and get away, and the Lewis Ginter Botanical Gardens provides the perfect atmosphere for that.
Well, Brittany, here at Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden, we have about 50 acres of landscaped gardens. And so we have blooms year-round. Anytime that you come to visit, you will see something blooming and something beautiful. So when you walk into the orchid wing, you will notice about 200 orchids that are in bloom. It's a tropical environment. We also right now have bananas growing in here. So there is always something fun and interesting to see. There is a waterfall where you can hear this wonderful water music of the water as it's coming down. And there are a lot of places too where you can take a picture and share with all your friends. We have all kinds of different orchids in here. Cattleya orchids, which are the kind that you might be familiar with at Mother's Day that people usually wear as a corsage. But then we also have some of the smaller types. Over in our near our waterfall, we have Oncidium orchids, which are a different shape, and all kinds of different fragrances and colors. There's huge variety in the orchid world. It's one of the most, one of the plants that has the most number of different cultivars. So always changing out here, always in bloom, and always beautiful to see.
That's really cool. I didn't know orchids were tropical.
Well, I have been told that orchids actually, you can find those on almost all the continents except for Antarctica. So they actually can thrive in a lot of different environments. They're very adaptive. I think that's their one of the things that makes them so wonderful, and that they can exist in so many different places. Very adaptive plant. Well, Brittany, this is our cottage or display wing. It's the west wing of the conservatory. And in here we have a thatched cottage with a cottage garden in front. And it changes, the displays change seasonally, but again, it's always full of beautiful color and interest. There are places where you can have a seat or take a picture, and you can explore and see a lot of different kinds of plants in this part of the conservatory. And this wing allows us to have displays in the late winter and early spring that give people a taste of spring. So we'll force bulbs to bloom in here in late winter and early spring, so you can come and see daffodils and tulips and those types of flowers before you would see them outside. And then throughout the spring, beautiful displays. And then as it starts to get warmer outside, we'll change over and do more of our summer display in here with summer annuals. Across the lake from us is the children's garden, and that's an area that's a lot of fun with hands-on interactive learning for kids of all ages. In the summertime, we have a splash pad over there so kids can play in the jets and the sprays of the water. And then as you walk around the lake here, you'll see we also have several floating docks. So you can walk out on the lake and you can have a different vantage point of the garden.
Well, thank you so much for showing us around today.
Well, thank you. It's really an honor to have you here. We hope that everyone will come and visit Lewis Skinner Botanical Garden.
Of course, and you should, because it's such a lovely place. So if you're ever in Richmond, make sure you stop by. If you enjoyed this episode of On the Map, visit onthemaptv.com for full episodes, bonus content, and more. You can even get involved by suggesting a location that you would like to see on the show. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnTheMapTV to keep up with all things On the Map.